Hey friends, welcome to Kirsten Nielsen Yoga. I'm Kirsten, if you haven't been on my channel before. Today I am stepping out of my comfort zone slightly and creating this kind of vlog style video as essentially a way for you to get to know me a little bit better and to understand my yoga journey and how it's evolved so much over the last 10 years. It might give you a little bit more of an insight into how your yoga practice can support you best and be your backbone, especially through really challenging times. Also how the practice can evolve for you and it can change and it can look really different to how it looked 10 years ago, and that's okay. There's so many different layers to yoga. What is yoga? We can obviously explore that a lot deeper in a different video. And the different tools that yoga can provide can obviously assist you in different times of your life. So let's rewind and go back. So just to get to know me a little bit better, I am originally Dutch girl from Holland. Grew up in London, so going to high school in London. And when I was growing up, I was really into dance. I loved all types of dance, ballet, tap, jazz, contemporary. I was into it all and I just loved exploring my body and moving my body in different ways. So my very first introduction into yoga was from a YouTube video, and I would have been about 14, 15, and I'm 30 now, so that was a while ago. It was a super advanced practice and I had no idea what I was doing. We got into mermaid pose, which obviously I know now, but back then I just gave it a crack. I didn't know really what I was doing, and suddenly I hear and I ripped a ligament in my groin. It was very painful. After that, I thought, oh, maybe this yoga is not for me, which is really sad because I know that a lot of people probably feel the same way. They go to a yoga practice that's super advanced. They don't understand what they're doing. It's not a beginner's practice. And then of course they injure themselves and then they don't want to come back. So that's kind of what happened to me first time round. I actually just didn't touch yoga for a while and I went straight into being a full gym junkie. I loved the gym. I loved lifting weights. I got really into Muay Thai boxing. I even went to Thailand and did a whole training course in Phuket on Muay Thai boxing. I then was teaching boxing. I was teaching HIIT classes in a gym in London. I was into it so much that I even dropped out of university to become a personal trainer. So I was studying at uni film and video editing, which back then I was like, well, that was a waste of time. I did it for about a year. And now I'm like, that wasn't a waste of time at all. That was very helpful. So I was really into the gym and really into lifting weights. And then of course I hurt my back. Someone recommended yoga to me and I thought, oh God, not this again. So I knew that I had to actually find a teacher to help me. So I just typed it in on Google, any studios that were near me, and I found one small studio in Surbiton in London. And that is where I met my first yoga teacher, Sarah, and she's probably been teaching for about 20 years. She's trained with David Swenson. She's practiced before with Patabi Joyce and Surat, Patabi Joyce's son. So it was very traditional Ashtanga, and she gave me the most beautiful introduction to yoga that I could have ever asked for. So even though it was Ashtanga, which those of you who don't know Ashtanga, it's a set sequence and you move through either like a primary series when you first start, and then when you develop that practice even more, you complete that practice in a sense, or you can do all of the poses, then you can work onto another series, the secondary series. I was still in the primary series with my beautiful teacher Sarah. She brought more of a feminine energy to the yoga practice, which I so appreciated because Ashtanga I find is quite a hard power practice, and she brought such softness with her teaching that it balanced it out so well. And she also assisted with props, with adjusting, which I know is quite unusual in the Ashtanga world. And she never made me feel as a beginner that I wasn't good enough or that I had to push myself in any way. She really supported me as I was, as my body was, and it took some time for my hamstrings to open, my low back to open, shoulders to open, especially as my shoulders were really tight from so much boxing. It was a gradual practice. So I would say I was practicing with her maybe about 3 times a week, and I was really into it to the point that I could feel that my gym, all of the stuff that I was doing in the gym was actually affecting my yoga practice. So I just started to let go of that just naturally. I wasn't really lifting heavy weights anymore or boxing. I wanted to dive in even deeper into my yoga practice. And I think the biggest thing for me there was when I was in the gym and when I was boxing and in that personal trainer world, I cared so much about the way that I looked. I was so worried that I didn't have a small enough waist, that I didn't have a six-pack, that my bum wasn't shaped perfectly. When I started yoga, none of that shit mattered. It was all about, what can the body do, and how does it feel in this shape? There were no mirrors around. It was all just about feeling. And so the way that you looked, it didn't matter. Of course, there are times in yoga where you are really focused on the way that the shape looks. But for me, it still felt so far from that, from where I came from personal training, where it was all about how you looked and measuring yourself and measuring what you ate and all that palaver. Now, around the same time that I was practicing with Sarah at the Yoga Hutch, I also started to go to Buddhism, and that just evolved really naturally. I was still teaching at a gym in London, and this woman came in, and she'd come into most of my classes frequently. So this is when I was teaching fitness, high interval training classes. And one day she had to leave a little bit early, and she said, "Oh, I'm just going to go to Buddhism, so I have to leave early at this time." And something in me was just like, huh? I just wanted to know what she meant by she was going to Buddhism. And obviously I've heard of the religion, but what do you mean you're going there? Are you doing a class? How does that all work? I was just really, really intrigued, really curious. And she could tell that I was just so curious, asking her so many questions, that she said, "Why don't you come with me one day?" And so I thought, okay, great. I never looked back. I went to one session and it was all about perception. So essentially the monk will lecture to you for about 45 minutes and then you'll meditate on those teachings. It was all about perception and reality. That was the first ever Buddhism class that I went to, was how there is no reality because my reality is so different to your reality. And it was just like, ding, ding, ding. I would have been 19 at this time. And it's like my whole world was just blown open and my mind was expanded. And that was the first time I really meditated and did a deep meditation practice. So I started going more to Buddhism as well as attending Ashtanga yoga. Obviously at this point I hadn't done my training and I didn't know the parallel between the philosophy of yoga and Buddhism. And then I remember one day Sarah coming up to me after class and saying to me, "You're going to do your yoga teacher training, aren't you?" I was like, yes, I am. I was already kind of thinking about becoming a yoga teacher and I wasn't quite sure whether I was ready or whether I'd done enough practice to get to that level of being a teacher. And then I just thought, let's go, I'm doing this. So I started with Ashtanga primary series, a modified series. So becoming trained in that, it was through a teacher training called Yoga London. After that, Sarah really just took me under her wing at the Yoga Hutch. She was so beautiful and so gracious, allowing me to assist in her classes with hands-on adjustments so I could really learn how to adjust. And then she gave me a spot teaching, and I was allowed to teach vinyasa, so I just taught kind of more of a modified Ashtanga, and I just weaved in a little bit of my own kind of flavor to it. And that's when I started to really explore vinyasa. Now at that time, that was 2014, so nearly 10 years, yoga was booming in London. It was wild. There was rocket yoga, there was Dharma yoga, there was goat yoga, yoga raves, there was, it was just Budokan. There was all types of yogas, and you could just explore and go to as many classes as you want in a day. It was fantastic. So many of my friends taught rocket yoga and Jiva Mukti. That was one I loved so much. It was like my world opened up to what is yoga, and this way of practicing is not the only way. There's just so many other ways that we can explore yoga. And I loved it. I was thriving. I was just doing yoga 24 hours of the day. I loved it. I think it was more through the Jiva Mukti I started to into Sanskrit and chanting and philosophy. All of my yoga teachers became my friends and my community, and it was a really, really beautiful time. And I was still, of course, doing my Buddhist practice, going to meditation every week, and I obviously started to see the similarities between Buddhism and yogic philosophy as they come from the same ancient text, the Upanishads. So it was really beautiful to kind of explore a different way of looking at the philosophy from the yogic point of view and then the Buddhist point of view, just so I can even go deeper into my meditation practice and just take a little bit from both. And then when I was 21, I moved to Australia, where I got this beautiful accent, so I now sound Australian. So I first moved to Melbourne, where I became a full-time yoga teacher, and I was teaching vinyasa, yin, restorative, all the different types of yoga. I taught a little bit of Ashtanga as well, taught lots of workshops. And what I think I'll do is another video on my teaching journey, so I can go into more depth with that. And when I moved to the Gold Coast, Byron Bay area, I met a beautiful teacher called Cassie Lee. Actually, I did meet her in Melbourne first, and she moved around the same time that I moved to the Byron area. And I started to do privates with her, and she completely changed my practice. With all the yoga classes I was doing, I was kind of staying at a little bit of I was kind of plateauing. You know, we were doing the same thing over and over again, and it's hard when there's so many people in a class. You can't get that one-to-one attention that you need in order to really elevate your asana practice, for someone to look at your body and go, okay, actually no, this is how we need to move your body in order to get to this shape. So Cassie did that for me. Cassie, I would say, up-leveled my practice and my asana teaching. So with her, I started to really explore all of the challenging poses like handstand, pincha, and I was really given the space to kind of actually get it. I was already practicing the arm balances and stuff like that when I was younger, but with her, I could really cement it and actually get to where I wanted to go. And around that same time, I started teaching for Creature Yoga, who I still teach for now in Byron Bay, and Cassie teaches there as well. And I started my YouTube channel. So that was really exciting. And I continued on with the privates with Cassie, and I kept elevating my practice in the asana sense. And then in 2021, one of my dearest friends, Lee, who was one of my first friends that I ever made in Melbourne in Australia, and we lived together in Melbourne, she passed away from suicide. I think that was a really pivotal moment for me, where my practice changed a lot after that. I let go of my asana practice pretty much completely, and I just dived deep into that pain. I felt like it had broken me open. So all of the philosophy that I had been learning, I actually was starting to really embody it because of having to deal with this amount of pain and grief in my body, but also the understanding that we are not the body. So in that point of time, when she left this world, this earth plane, and met the spirit world, I had to actually comprehend that that happened, so that she wasn't in her body anymore. And so I really, really could understand the teachings then of we are not in our body. We're not our body, we're not our thoughts, we're not our emotions, we are soul. And I really started to connect more with that teaching as I was connecting with her spirit and feeling into her more. yeah, I mean, I'm getting emotional talking about it because it was such a beautiful transition for me to go so much deeper into my yogic practice, where it was actually, it wasn't about the asana, it wasn't about the body anymore. It was just really understanding that I am a soul and I'm using the body as a vessel and I'm tuning it like an instrument so I can play it beautifully, but I am not connected to it. Like, I am connected to it, but it is not me. I am soul. So yeah, it was big. And I don't think I have been the same ever since. I mean, we're not the same. We change every second. Our body changes. But what I mean in the sense is my practice was just completely changed. I think the stresses of life hit me a lot harder after that, and I was still dealing with so much grief that I actually went straight into burnout. I worked myself, I just kept working and working, and I kept pushing myself when I really needed to rest. So I went into a complete burnout, adrenal fatigue. Because of that, I couldn't practice strong asana. I couldn't do any like high interval exercise. I had to listen to my body and completely rest. So it was a beautiful teaching for me to soften and to really embrace more softness in my practice. So lots of yin, lots of yoga nidra, lots and lots of meditation. Now that I've kind of come out of that burnout phase, I am still really honoring the softness. So my physical asana practice is coming back. I'm weaving in a little bit more strength and handstands and all the things that I love to do, but I'm just really honoring where I'm at and not pushing, not forcing. I'm letting go a little bit more of needing to do all of the crazy poses and all of the crazy arm balances and all the things, and actually just enjoying and being with all that I am in this moment and embracing that through more meditation. So yeah, that's my journey so far, the last 10 years. And like everyone, my yoga practice will always evolve and change. I really use it as my backbone to support me now with whatever I'm going through, whether it's that I need to bring a little bit more fire and a little bit more movement to get rid of any kind of stale, stuck energy in my body, or whether I really need to honor feeling overwhelmed, kind of out of my body, and come home through meditation, through pranayama, breath work. And I just feel so grateful, and I have so much gratitude for the fact that I stumbled upon this ancient teaching of yoga and Buddhism, just using all of the tools, all of the teachings from my teachers and their teachers and their teachers, that I can use all the tools to really support me and act like a backbone for my life. So I really hope that listening to my yoga journey has helped you in some way, or given you more insight into how you can use the practice to best support you through all stages of life, physically, mentally, emotionally, and help you evolve spiritually. And to also understand that no one's perfect. I'm not a perfect yoga teacher. I'm a human being having this very human experience, and my yoga practice just really assists me in that. There is no guru here who is enlightened, but more a being that wants to awaken and will keep working on herself and keep practicing and using all of the tools to become even more awake and to assist others in their awakening as well. So thank you for watching. Namaste.